If you would like to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. More information in the description below. This was a dark, fervent place, even before the miracle blessed it. Forgiveness and holiness were found through guilt, punishment, and penance, in a never-ending cycle of torment and abuse upon oneself and others deemed needing of judgment. To break away from this, to be a blasphemer, or one fallen from grace, meant inviting pain or death. It was all done in the name of faith, in worship. To die for one's belief or the beliefs of others was commonplace. Yet still, there were beautiful landscapes, wondrous cathedrals, places of gathering where life was cherished and tended to. Amongst individuals, there were humbling displays of love, of adoration for human life. So lest you write Cvstodia off as hell itself, remember that faith can be righteous and good when grown in the hearts of those who seek true betterment for all around them. What awaited the custodians after death was a procession, where their grieving souls would gather beyond a woven dream and eternally be held captive by their own punishments or self-gratification, never-ending penance and worship. This is the most ancient of things, this procession. It precedes all else known to exist beyond life, and the fervor of the custodians in life gave this procession power. But the power of the ancient procession, of the custodians' zeal in life, gave existence to something else in that place beyond death and dreams. They were called the High Wills, a trinity composed of one male and two female visages, which wept gold and spoke as one being. They were able to speak themselves into existence and sanctify themselves. This godlike entity sought to use this ancient eternal procession. You see, in this place beyond death, on the other side of dream, there was a power which the High Wills could harness. And it would be known as the miracle. How befitting a name that is may be debatable, but everything is a matter of perspective, right? The miracle wasn't intrinsically good or bad, but it did have whims and desires. It was a chaotic force that lacked form or voice, yet acted with an unknowable purpose. The miracle simply was, I am that I am. As the story goes, the High Wills began to use the enigmatic force, the miracle, with a vision to create a kingdom woven from the threads of dreams where the ancient eternal procession's faith would unite in a single act of adoration which would give the High Wills eternity and power, elevating them above all else, higher even than the skies. It would be a true God. But the fervor of the procession was dependent upon the zealotry of the custodians, and the High Wills could not pass through the dream into the living world. It could not reach Cvstodia. It would take time and a spectacular show of faith to make way for the High Wills' miracle. But eventually, the stars aligned. A tormented young man was so racked with guilt for his unspoken sins that he sat upon a wooden log and prayed for pain. He prayed for punishment. So strong was his faith and his desire for this that the miracle was able to reach him, and it was granted. The first miracle began, and all within Cvstodia would bear witness to it. From the log he sat upon, roots spread into the ground, and wooden limbs began to wrap around his own. The young man never once cried out or complained, and the people of the land came to pray before him as the miracle slowly took place. It was said that his final words were, "My great guilt." This spot where the tree grew became known as the Knot of the Three Words, and the young man became known as the Twisted One to some and the Father to others. The miracle had finally come to Cvstodia, and in all people, it began to manifest. The tales of the miracle and its blessings upon individuals are best told as the coming adventure unfolds. But for yourself, imagine what your penance or blessing might be. A moment in your life when you've begged of the unknown for something to help you. Your dire request for help is answered in a perverse way. It is cruel, painful, humiliating, terrifying, diseased, whatever best suits your prayer and atonement. And there's no escape because this fickle miracle cannot be challenged. But there were some who questioned the miracle. Chief amongst them was His Holiness Escribar, a head figure within Cvstodia's religious structures, if not the highest-ranking official. His Holiness saw the suffering of the land and deigned that the miracle had forsaken them all. Escribar turned his throne against those who resided beyond the dream, and his words could sway hearts and minds. His actions could have consequences for the High Wills. So the godlike entity blessed Escribar with a miracle all his own. He was slowly turned into a great tree. His blood turned to black sap, his skin to red bark, but death was not the end for Escribar. Through the miracle, he was reincarnated within the tree, and then from within he began to burn. For 90 days, the tree, His Holiness Escobar, showered the grounds beneath himself with ashes, creating a mountain of it within his once grand cathedral. Many were trapped under the ashes, and when the tree finally stopped burning, many more were compelled by the miracle to climb it, to reach the top where Escobar's throne rested. And they all failed, of course, sinking into the ashes, swallowed up one by one, until at long last the cathedral stood quiet. Then a wind began to blow, creating a foreboding cloud of gray so dense that it hid the entirety of the church. Then the ground trembled, and the chorus of cries began. All who had fallen into the mountain of ashes were returned to life, full of faith and rage so incomprehensible that they became monstrous. Hordes began to flood out into Cvstodia to punish those who still yet lived. Escobar was amongst those changed, but he did not leave the church. He remained in its tower to perpetuate the will of the miracle. To keep safe the entrance to Escobar's church, which would be known as the Mother of Mothers, 4 holy guardian visages were created. 3 of them would safeguard a wound suffered by Escobar, manifested into a key of sorts. Entry into the church would only be granted if one possessed all 3 keys. And to obtain each key from its guardian visage, a chosen one would have to undergo 3 trials, called the 3 humiliations, trial by combat against 3 powerful beings. The 4th guardian visage kept safe a holy wound, which was unique to its siblings. It was a wound which caused supreme suffering to one's very soul, which went beyond any act of repentance or guilt. Despite the terrors of the world, or perhaps because of them, the people of Cvstodia continued to pray and seek atonement. Another great miracle took place when a young woman, tormented by guilt, knowing that her desire for a miracle would be granted, struck her chest over and over again with a figure of the Twisted One. She prayed for a grievous miracle, and through her guilt, a weapon was created. The statue of the Twisted One changed into a blade which she thrust through her body. When she died, her body was turned to stone, and the sword called the mea culpa embedded in her chest. Her death site became known as the Kneeling Stone. Purple flowers bloomed around her. Her name was unknown, her motives a secret, but for centuries the Kneeling Stone was left untouched. But the 4th holy guardian visage could see the origins of the miracle. It understood that its acts came from the high wills, which only wished to ascend as a god no matter the cost. The 4th visage stole away the heart of the mea culpa, the apodictic heart. It was the true power of this guilty blade, and it was the only thing that could challenge the powers that created it, the miracle, the high wills. It did this in secret, not even telling its siblings what it had done, but it did try to tell them about the truth it had seen, about the high wills. But its 3 siblings accused them of being a traitor, so they plucked out the 4th visage's eyes and imprisoned them underground, under the site of the first miracle, where the Twisted One was created. They suffered there for centuries, keeping its holy wound and the apodictic heart of the mea culpa secret, awaiting someone who could restore their vision, who they could perhaps tell why they were dubbed a traitor, someone who they might aid in standing against the high wills and its miracles. Those most faithful and mighty were bound to the high wills, with unseeable chains shackling their spirits. Any opposition to Escobar was soundly punished. The Anointed Legion was created to snuff out any people, factions, or orders that were deemed to be heretical, such as the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow, an order of unspeaking warriors, which was completely wiped out for an unknown sin against His Holiness. But the nature of the miracle itself, when not wielded by the high wills, was quite mysterious, its motives sometimes contradictory. One amongst the extinct Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow was chosen, brought back to life. The unspeaking, unnamed man was guided to the chapel where the Kneeling Stone was housed by a cursed being named Desamparados. The ghoulish scholar bid the unspeaking man to take from the Kneeling Stone the blade called the mea culpa, for the miracle itself willed this to be. He drew it with no resistance and was dubbed the Penitent One. But before the Penitent One found his purpose, he was confronted by one of Escobar's mightiest knights, Cvstodia of the Rapt Agony. While his penance is silence, hers is blindness. Their fight was a brief one. Cvstodia soundly defeated the newly awakened warrior, yet she did not kill him out of hatred. She knew that if he was chosen by the miracle, then he would return to life again. This was his first trial, his first kneeling. Chrysanta dragged the Penitent One back to the corpse piles of his once brethren. She threw him and the mea culpa down, and he died as she promised that should he return from death, they would meet again, and his second kneeling would begin. Well, he did arise. The miracle chose the silent Penitent One, but it is a fickle, volatile, capricious force. Why would it revive this man? What penance has been left undone? At prayer altars called prie-dieux, he will be resurrected again and again should the Penitent One fail and fall. But why not his brethren? Other warriors of the Brotherhood. Hundreds of them are dead here, their bodies kept intact long after their clothes turned to dust. Why him and not them? Does he even remember what happened to them? Would it even matter? His first hurdle in this new resurrection is the warden of his dead brotherhood, who too is unspeaking yet full of feral rage, turned against the Penitent One as soon as he is within sight. Under their watch, none are meant to leave this place, but the Penitent One remembers how to fight. The mea culpa is not a foreign tool. He wields it like an extension of his own body and kills the unspeaking warden. The Penitent One must baptize himself at the dawn of this new journey. He removes his helmet, fills it with the blood of the warden, and douses himself in it. This is how he will earn his penance, through the spilling of others' blood, and perhaps how he'll too extend mercy to those who suffer the madness and torture of the miracle. There are so many things unknown by the Penitent One, and we will approach this as though we too know very little of this world. This video is supported by patrons on Patreon, YouTube members, and Twitch subs. You know what's scary?
Taxes! Traffic! Grandma!
You know what's not scary? Patreon and YouTube member. Starting at just $2 a month, you can help support the channel. See that puppy? It's like extra and early content. See this sweet little burb? It's like Patreon and members only streams. Safe, happy, kittens. If you want to help keep the channels going, check out the description for more information on how to become a patron on Patreon or a YouTube member. Now, back to the lore. Beyond the walls of the Brotherhood is a lumbering, kneeling man, wrapped in rope, his face covered, holding a scroll. He's quite kind to the Penitent One, and introduces himself as Deo Gratias. His penance is acting as a witness and narrator, but he too will be a guide. He was once a scribe in an abbey, but he left it behind to travel the lands, to document the works of the miracle. Something has brought him here to do this for the Penitent One. He says that the Penitent One seeks the cradle of affliction within the mother of mothers of churches. He's describing where Escobar's throne rests, atop that mountain of ashes, but in truth, not even Deo Gratias knows what's actually in that church. Long have the doors of the mother of mothers been shut, but it can be opened. Deo Gratias tells the Penitent One that carrying out 3 humiliations will grant him access, and he even tells the Penitent One where to go: the high mountains, the depths of a dark entombed church, and deep underground beneath a great bell called Yondo. He gifts the Silent One a thorn for his blade. Should it cut him as he wields the mea culpa, should it grow and sprout more thorns, then he will know that the miracle is with him, for better or worse. The scribe doesn't have any more to offer. It's time to move on. The forests and roads are full of people now completely enthralled by the miracle. The skeletons around the ruins of civilization tell stories of terrible deaths and suffering. Yet when the Penitent One reaches the town called Albero, the chaos fades. There are signs of decay around the town, and though quite empty and devoid of life, it's relatively untouched by the madness of Cvstodia. Within one of the buildings is the sanctuary of the Brotherhood of the Kissers of Wounds. The head figure of this small band of healers is named Tirso, and like Deo Gratias, he is quite kind to the unspeaking Penitent One. Long ago, when an illness given form by the miracle swept the land, Albero was mostly spared from it, until a young man full of fear and sickness arrived. So quickly did it spread that the healers of Albero were unable to cope. Tirso was amongst them, and when he beheld the great suffering of the young man that brought the illness to the town, Tirso was so overcome with empathy that he held the young man in his arms, wept, and kissed him on the forehead. And he looked up at Tirso, no longer feeling agony. The healers were called to the young man's side, and in faith, with no fear of the contagion, they began to kiss his wounds. Those healers went on to save hundreds of lives and became known as the Kissers of Wounds. Tirso simply asks the Penitent One that if he should come across healing herbs on his journey, to please bring them back here. Beneath the sanctuary is an ossuary, a large chamber where bones are kept. A man is there, and he asks the Penitent One to collect any remains he may find and bring them back here. He says that the bones need one another, and in doing so, a truth that they guard will be revealed. Ooh, how interesting. I wonder what it could be. Back above ground, within a humble church, is the Order of the True Shrine. A representative of the order tells the Penitent One through a window that here, they too collect remains, but for people whose souls were denied an afterlife. They do this so that they can have a holy burial, so those poor souls might pass on and find peace. It's time to leave the relative safety of civilization behind. The Penitent One will return here often to help those that he can. He journeys on past broken cities, grand cathedrals long fallen to rot, vicious humans honoring the fervor of the miracle. The Penitent One learns a bit about the Anointed Legion, the stories of normal folks who once walked these places. There's a bitterness and loss to all of it, a sorrow that can't quite be put to words. Each item represents a person, a group, an event, something long lost to time, and much of it precious. For some time, the Penitent One explores the lands, scrapes together greater powers for himself and the mea culpa, takes herbs back to Tirso, bones to the ossuary, and remains to the Order of the True Shrine. His first great delve is into a place called Mercy Dreams. It fits the description of a place that Dio Gracias told him about, an entombed church. One of the 3 humiliations should be here. Though it's occupied by specters, reanimated skeletons, and whip-wielding humans, there are a few sound-minded and still living people to be found here. Viridiana, who will aid the Penitent One during great fights should he ask, at the expense of her own life force. Then he meets Candelaria, who sells an interesting variety of goods. She will appear all around Cvstodia, but at this first meeting, he acquires a special key. It's to a door back in the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrows. The warden he defeated there was once guarding it, but somehow it fell into Candelaria's possession. She must be a wily one to have something like this. The Penitent One will have to take a trip back to the Brotherhood sometime to see what secrets lie behind that locked door. The first of his trials is impossible to mistake. The Penitent One is faced with a creature seemingly demonic and tree-like. It is called Ten Piedad, and like everything else in this cursed place, it's consumed by unthinking violence, the blessing of the miracle in play. Its limited mobility and unreasoning temperament make it a relatively easy opponent for the Silent Warrior. Ten Piedad is granted mercy, granted death, and with its demise, the first of the 3 humiliations has been completed. In the chamber beyond, there is a tomb, housing the unrotted body of a pure saint who witnessed the first miracle so long ago. The Penitent One kneels at the resting place and is taken into the dream, a place between life and the afterlife, where spirits cross through to reach the eternal procession, a place woven from the dreams of Cvstodia. Here resides one of the 3 holy guardian visages. They were born from the dedication and faith of saints who witnessed the first miracle. They were tasked with keeping safe the metaphorical keys to where Escobar now resides within the Mother of Mothers. This key is called the Holy Wound of Attrition, and the Guardian Visage blesses the Penitent One with it. Little else is said before the Guardian Visage casts the Penitent One out of the dream, back into the living world. Dio Gracias meets him in the next hallway, but does not offer congratulations or praise. Instead, the massive man reminds the Penitent One that there are still 2 more humiliations he must complete, 2 more Guardian Visages to find before he can enter the Mother of Mothers. The Silent One continues his search and finds a plethora of beings that he may choose to help or beseech for aid. The miracle has brought suffering to them all, but the acts of the Penitent One may defy that. He meets the false saint within a dream of salt, who will bless items as his penance for past sins. He relies on the Penitent One to bring him items for blessings, so that he can be freed from his penance to pass on to the other side of the dream. Then, the Penitent One meets Nacimiento, who does not know why he suffers as he does. The face of an old man is growing on his chest, but it does not speak or think. As it grows and becomes defined, Nacimiento himself regresses in age. He is an old man now, but he looks like a child. Poor Nacimiento is cursed and does not realize that what grows on his chest is himself, which he will soon birth and die from. What emerges from his body will then begin regressing in age, a new face will form on his chest, which he will birth and die from. It's a cursed and never-ending cycle. What sin did Nacimiento commit for this to be a worthy punishment? The Silent Warrior goes back to the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow to unlock that door whose key he bought from Candelaria. A treasure within will make ascending heights easier. Using the new tool, he finds an old chapel above the Brotherhood, where the kneeling stone is, where he got the mea culpa. He was thrown down from here some time ago by Crisanta. The doors are locked, though, and nothing will break them down. Then, upon the mountains of the endless dusk, he meets a foe unlike any who came before her. She seems angelic, clad in golden armor and red ribbons. She does not speak to the Penitent One. She strikes him so hard that it splits open a tree he's standing before. They immediately enter into combat with one another, but at the finale of their fray, the angelic woman flees the arena in defeat, leaving behind a piece of her red ribbon bearing the name Perpetua of the Anointed Legion. He can use this blessed ribbon for himself, and he will keep her name close, as it is certainly not the last time that they will meet. At the mountain crossing, he meets an old fellow named Redento, a barefoot pilgrim of the Order of the Genuflectors. His eyes are always downcast to the path before him, his back bent, as is the penance of his brotherhood. He explains that beneath them is the great bell that Deogracias told him about, Yondo, built upside down within the earth so that its ringing would reach distant lands. But something is stifling the bell. Its chime is now replaced by 3 low moans intertwined deep within the bowels of the earth. Redento wishes to cross this valley via an old lift system, but it's not functioning right now, and the dangers of Yondo below keep him here. If the Penitent One so wishes, he can help Redento in his travels by opening up pathways for him to keep him safe from danger. The next path the Penitent One takes is high in the mountains, to a place of ice and snow, as Deogracias told him to go. Some place up here is one of the humiliations, but the search is an arduous and vertical one. A misstep or missed ledge means a long fall and probable death. Once above the normal rubble of the ground, the mountains betray that something holy or divine is near. Weeping faces in the mountains looking up, finer architecture. There is more hidden away here than broken lifts and dead bodies. At the summit, it finally comes into view. The convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage. But the Penitent One doesn't realize that he has been followed by another soldier wearing gold armor and red ribbons. The unnamed man speaks aloud to his sister, yet he is completely alone. He claims that his encounter with the Penitent One is approaching, and he doesn't need her protection this time. He doesn't pursue, but instead treks back down the mountainside. The inhabitants of the convent are disfigured, seemingly diseased. There are a few apparitions that manifest to fire upon the Silent One. Fire and melee are the general attack types, but the outright aggression of everything here makes this a hellish delve, which is to say, everything here is really, really mean. Atop the once grand site is the next trial, Our Lady of the Charred Visage. In life, she was called Aria, and she was so beautiful that over time, she was believed to be the living, breathing image of divinity. But Aria did not enjoy this. The people would take her out on processions, her image was put into their homes, her entire identity was her face. To escape this life, Aria burned her face with boiling oil as a gift to true divinity, and then she became a nun. But that was not the end of Aria's sad story. For her display of piety and humbleness, she was blessed with a miracle. Her face never stopped burning. Even as she aged, the smoking wound remained fresh as the moment that it happened. The church canonized poor Aria as Our Lady of the Charred Visage, and an order was created in her name. All nuns who joined it burned their faces as well. Finally, after so many centuries of torture, Aria's pain is ended by the Penitent One. The second of the trials complete, the second humiliation is done. In the next chamber is the body of another saint who witnessed the first miracle long ago. From their faith and fervor, the second holy guardian visage was created to reside within the dream between life and the afterlife, to guard the key where Escribar resides. This one is the holy wound of compunction. Deogracias again meets the Penitent One on the other side of the arena. He's ever faithfully been keeping records of his actions, and he reminds the warrior of what his next task is. The final visage is within Yondo, deep in the earth. The Penitent One knows exactly where to go. Redento had told him that the bell's chime had ceased, and once he's underground, it becomes apparent why. There are 2 massive chains holding it in place, and the pathway down to where those terrible low moans are coming from is blocked off. Though the Penitent One can't break his way through, the resonance of the bells here damage anything nearby. If he could unchain the great bell, its resonance may shake the floor free. He now possesses enough power and vitality to make the goings here far easier than previous journeys. It's less he's trapped in here with them and more they're trapped in there with him. The Penitent One cuts his way through the underground, finds the 2 statues clasping the chains, holding the great bell in place, fixes the lift for Redento so he can make his way safely across the valley. But before he goes back to ring the bell, the Penitent One finds a path hidden away in a corner. Not unusual in Cvstodia, but this one is different. It leads him to a series of tunnels full of boats. Why are these here so deep underground? This place is called Echoes of Salt, and the intrigue of it takes his attention away from Yondo for a while. For what feels like hours, he climbs and searches through the caves, eventually finding the resting place of a long-lost warrior, though this tomb almost seems to be hidden, and the woman atop it, she looks like the angelic being that he fought some time ago. He kneels to pay his respects, and the voice of a woman reaches out to him. This is Perpetua, and she knows that the Penitent One has already met her visage in battle. It is because of his faith that they are able to meet now, behind the back of the miracle, which will eventually find out that they've spoken. Perpetua tells him that the angelic being that he fought wasn't truly her. It was created by the miracle. In death, she has been freed from the miracle's control, so she can freely speak without its influence over her. The actions of the Penitent One thus far have instilled a trust and hope in him. See, Perpetua was once of the Anointed Legion, a faithful servant and warrior for Escribar, but in death and freedom, she has turned against the miracle. It's been using her image and her voice to control her brother, Estrus, and she is less than thrilled about it. The miracle is manipulating Estrus using her voice, getting him to follow the Penitent One. It's going to force him into a fight with the Silent Warrior upon the Bridge of Calvary, and she knows that her brother will lose. Perpetua wishes for the Penitent One to rise above his current mission, to not end his journey with Escribar at the Mother of Mothers, to not concern himself with the throne within the church, no. She asks the Penitent One to find purpose above that, above even the dream between life and the afterlife. Find the roots of all this evil. Perpetua's voice is limited beyond her tomb, but she assures the Penitent One that when her brother confronts him, she will stay his hand. She gives him a scapular to show Estrus as proof of her blessing, and promises that when Estrus is ready to hear it, she will whisper into his ear a request to aid the Penitent One. So great is Estrus's love for his sister that he would defy Escribar and the miracle to honor her. She bids him to journey on fearlessly, and their communion ends. Well, seems this journey isn't actually nearing its end. There's much, much more to be done. The Penitent One returns to the bell, now free from the chains that held it still, and he rings it. As hoped, the chime is so powerful that it causes the rickety walkway that he's standing on to crumble away. It drops him into a new depth called Grievous Ascends. It's a dark, fetid place barely intact anymore. During his descent through the winding spirals, he finds another suffering being, Altus Gracias. Once, this creature was 3 sisters who prayed together within a church, fervently hoping to be spared marriage. It's not known why all 3 of them so desperately did not want to be wed, but the miracle heard their pleas and answered. It bound their hair together, and from it they were encased in an egg made of their hair. Should the Penitent One bring this egg 3 items of marriage, Altus Gracias will hatch. 3 sisters forced into one body, their suffering clear. But they will give him something of theirs that has remained immaculate. It is within another hairy egg, created from the sorrows of Altus Gracias. If the Penitent One helps the egg hatch and takes it to the false saint at the Salt Lake for blessing, from the egg will hatch 3 gnarled tongues. It is a purified, powerful relic which will be a great aid to the Penitent One during his climbs and travels. With these tasks completed, Altus Gracias may pass on to the other side of the dream. She leaves in her abandoned egg a gift for the Penitent One, a knot of hair and a story with it. After the sisters were made into an egg, an altar of worship was built around it. But one night, the priests of the church heard a terrible sound, 3 voices groaning as one. The egg was gone after that. Something had stolen it away, hid it far down here. What that could have been greets the Penitent One a short time later. It is the last of the trials, the 3rd humiliation. 3 women called Trace and Gustius. Their arena is a vertical one, which forces the Penitent One to jump and climb as he fights, all the while a wall of fire pursuing him. They act as 3 separate beings until the end of the foray, when defeat is near. Then they combine into one single attacker, but the Penitent One ends them decisively. The last of the humiliations has been completed. In the next chamber is the 3rd saint who witnessed the first miracle. He again kneels and enters the dream where the final holy guardian visage awaits him. They offer no new words or insights, but bless the Penitent One with the final key, the holy wound of contrition. He is cast back out into the world of the living, and with these 3 humiliations complete, the door to the Mother of Mothers cracks open. Deogracius meets him again, and tells him that across the Bridge of Calvary, he will find the Mother of Mothers now open. The Bridge of Calvary is where Perpetua said her brother Estrus would confront him. Upon that bridge, he will have to make his choice. What sort of penance does he seek? He attends to his business at Albaro, takes care of the kissers of wounds, delivers bones to the ossuary, and remains to the order of the true shrine, but he does not waste time in getting to that bridge. Estrus confronts him just before the doors as Perpetua said he would. He speaks not to the Penitent One, but to his sister, or rather the voice pretending to be his sister, the miracle. He says that he's doing this to prove his worth to Chrysanta and readies himself for battle, but Perpetua, the true Perpetua, intervenes as a flash of light which Estrus cannot deny. It's made clear to him, through words that the Penitent One cannot hear, that Perpetua has blessed the Silent One and granted him her favor. The scapular he has is further proof of it. Esdras asks the Penitent One to meet him at the chapel where he was first anointed as the Penitent One, where his first kneeling took place, where he fought Chrysanta. There, he will hear his sister's voice again, and they will decide how they'll move forward. The Penitent One may decide to ignore this, to move forward into the Mother of Mothers, face fate there, perhaps sit upon the throne himself and become another tool of the miracle. He may choose to not ascend beyond the dream, to not see the root of the miracle, to not defy and kill whatever may be there in an ultimate blasphemy. Well, who likes working for the man anyways? He decides that he will venture back to the Brotherhood, to that chapel, to see what these siblings have to offer. Esdras welcomes the Penitent One with grace, as the words of his sister have steadied his heart. He too has heard of Perpetua's wish for the Penitent One, that he might rise above these lands, to fight beyond the dream, to end whatever lies there, and he's down as a ride or die. He gives the Silent Warrior a key grown from twisted wood, something that he's had for a long while. It will open a door to something condemned to eternal reclusion, something that Esdras himself can't even explain. Oh, how exciting a secret, whatever could it be? He directs the Penitent One to the Library of Negated Words, and tells him to find the keeper of the keys there. The twisted wood key that the Penitent One now possesses is the only one missing from the key keeper's collection. It is someplace around the Mother of Mothers. For uncounted years, it's a place kept sequestered from the rest of the world. The Penitent One hurries back to the Bridge of Calvary and rushes through the doors once closed off to him to discover that he's within what once was Escribar, a great iron-like tree which grew throughout the Mother of Mothers. Though he burned for 90 days, it did not completely destroy what Escribar had turned into. The Mother of Mothers is a massive compound in all directions, composed of several smaller segments that make it more like a city than a church. His journey here will not be a quick one, and after a few chambers, there's not even a hint as to where this library he seeks could be. Deogracius greets him on the patio of the Silent Steps, a welcome sight to see out here. He tells the Penitent One a bit about Perpetua and Esdras, and that his actions have freed them from the punishments of the miracle. It was said that, even after Perpetua's death, her brother could still hear her voice. Now the Penitent One knows that it wasn't really his sister that he was hearing. The miracle would have driven Esdras to his own death in combat. During his long search for the library entrance, the Penitent One finds Deo Gracias again, standing at his full height before a tree oozing gold. He tells the Penitent One that this was where the first miracle took place, when a young man prayed for punishment and the miracle answered. Deo Gracias mentions something that the Penitent One has only heard in passing a couple times. He talks about the high wills. He says that the young man asked the high wills for punishment, that his fate was the first manifestation of the miracle. Is that what lies beyond the other side of the dream, the high wills? Are they what actually control this power called the miracle? After a great deal of hardship and countless rounds of combat, the Penitent One finds the library. It was beneath the Mother of Mothers. Within these vast halls are texts and artifacts that existed before the arrival of the miracle. The things stored here were considered heretical, pagan, dark. This was not a place to seek for scholarly endeavor, let alone sorcery, unless one was willing to risk the blessings of the miracle as punishment, or a violent death at the hands of lingering souls that thirst for the knowledge of this place. Much like Deo Gracias, the Keeper of Keys is a lumbering fellow, but something is deeply troubling him, a sound. He doesn't know its origin or why it's happening, but the thudding sound is driving him absolutely bonkers. He begs the Penitent One to find where it's coming from and silence it. Well, the Penitent One doesn't hear anything, but sure, he'll help a brother out. He treks around the library, putting his fingers on all the off-limit relics, reading whatever he wants. It's not until he's very close to it does he hear the thudding sound that the Keeper was so upset over. It's a man. He's holding a rock and beating it against a wall like he's trying to get through. He doesn't respond to the Penitent One, but when he hits the wall with the mea culpa, it fades away, as does the man. A young man's body was encased within it, his son. The man was trying to find his boy. The Penitent One is able to hear the lingering thoughts of the body. They were trying to get out of this place, but instead found themselves trapped here. The walls would shift to capture whoever tried to make off with its secrets and knowledge. He was another of its countless victims. The Keeper meets him back in the halls, and in gratitude, introduces himself as Diosdado. These two are officially bros. They meet back at the front of the library, where they originally met. The Penitent One shows him the key that Estrus gave him, and he recognizes it right away. The door it unlocks was veiled in ancient illusions eons ago. He hands the key over, and with a couple taps of his staff, Diosdado reveals the door. He does warn the Penitent One to be careful of what is within. Oh, whatever could it be? The door takes him to another secret under the Mother of Mothers, directly below the Knot of the Three Words, the site where the first miracle took place. Its roots have grown into a chamber underground, and nestled into it is a delightful surprise the Penitent One couldn't have expected. A fourth holy guardian visage. Well, why would one of them be imprisoned down here? This fourth visage starts to spill the tea right away. The other three guardians accuse them of being a liar, a deceiver. They plucked out their eyes, hid them away within Cvstodia, and imprisoned their sibling within the roots of this tree. This fourth visage claims that their words were ones of truth, even if they defied the high wills. They were put here to be silenced, and all they have now is darkness. They ask the Penitent One to help them to find their eyes so they can see again. They vow that if he does this, they will reveal the truth that they witnessed, which led to their imprisonment here. The first eye location that the fourth visage described was a place of bone, ash, and song. The second being a dried-up sea, where ships rest amidst terrible thunder. The first location is tough. It doesn't immediately conjure anything up. The second one does, though. Echoes of salt. There were no great ships there, but there were certainly places left to be explored. So he treks back to the underground, dried-up sea and starts checking corners. Sure enough, he finds a sprawling series of caverns full of broken-up, rotting ships. The existence of this place defies logic, but tells a story of a more prosperous time, when commerce and travel were well supported by fleets of merchant ships. There is still a very low tide here, perhaps better seen as an underground lake. A quite out-of-place rich white and gold boat rests upon it, as though it were just waiting for him. It ferries him across the waters to a spot where no others walk. Corpses reveal ancient thoughts of fearing something inside the water. The sound of thunder is reassurance that he's in the right place, but the appearance of its source is far from comforting. She is Serpis, grand behemoth snake, and the eye of the fourth visage rests in her skull. She viciously fights to protect her lair, proving to be the hardiest enemy the Penitent One has yet faced off against. Her battle is a long one that punishes missteps and errors. He brings down the ancient sea serpent, ending the terrible thunder that shook this place and taking the broken left eye of the traitor as his prize. It is during his errands back in Albaro that his way forward is clarified. He drops off herbs to Tirso, remains to the order outside, and then he drops by the ossuary to drop off bones. Bones, ashes, silence until more bones. Something is behind that door. By golly, this is it. The Penitent One needs to find more bones to get that door open. He jets back to the Mother of Mothers to clear its hallways to explore to search, but high in its tower, he finds a vile display of holiness. A young woman, trying to howl in pain, but it's as though her voice won't create the sound. She is cut all over, bleeding profusely, yet she's unwavering. She doesn't try to stop it. A man sits before her in prayer. His name is Cleophas, and he is attending to Socorro, the pious lady of the perpetual agony. He speaks of her as though her existence is divinity and worthy of worship. Socorro grew up in a village settled beside a road used by the church. Prisoners of the faith were walked up the road to a hillside where their punishments and torture would begin. Socorro witnessed their great suffering and heard the cries of the damned day and night, and was such a compassionate youth that she prayed to the miracle. She asked that their pain and wounds be passed on to her instead, and her prayer was answered. The lashes, punches, lacerations began to appear on Socorro instead of the prisoners. She was not able to die, though. Her body began to deform, her cries never ceased, but she didn't waver. She didn't ask for it to cease. The people she shielded from harm were inducted into the Anointed Legion, where their every wound would be transferred to Socorro instead. They enjoyed safety from all pain and harm, while this poor young woman suffered in their stead. If the Penitent One so desires, he may seek out 3 marks of refuge for Socorro. They are obtained through combats with warriors of the Anointed Legion. If he brings them all back, she will be set free from this miracle, allowed to peacefully die and move on. A great foe is set before the Penitent One, but it's not Escobar. He is still nowhere to be found. Rather, it's the exhumed body of an archbishop named Melquiades. After his death, after he was entombed, those faithful to the miracle exhumed him. They washed his bones in wine, dressed him in silk, adorned him with jewels, and moved his bones around as though he were alive again. It is a strange act of reverence that makes this weird encounter possible. At the end of this macabre display, he finds himself in a dark hallway with only a bare path visible. The body of a man holds something up as though an offering and fades away at his approach. It is the deformed mask of Orestes. In life, Orestes was an archbishop who was ordered to uncover some unknown secret. His journey took him into the dream, where he was unable to return from. He never found what he was looking for and died knowing that his pride had brought him to the grave. But why is this here, and what the hell is it for? Why was it held in a place of importance? Upon holding it, the dream surrounding the body of the archbishop fades away. Well, after a great deal of searching, after meeting a naked, bloody, gold-faced cherub baby inside a bowl inside a painting, after playing a round of Blasphemous on an arcade machine, after witnessing the horrific rebirth of poor Nascimento, the Penitent One finds that this mask is a key to an elevator, which will take him to the high towers of the Mother of Mothers. He needs 2 more. Where could he possibly find them, though? He's quite well mapped out these regions. There are a few untouched places. He still needs to get more bones for the ossuary, so it looks like it's time to get back out there and fill in any gaps he may have left. He starts nearby, in the Library of Negated Word. It's hard to imagine, but there is yet an even deeper vault of secrets underneath the library. It's called the Sleeping Canvas, and here, profane and heretical works of art are held. At least with a book, you're not confronted immediately with its message, not so much with a painting though. Everything that went against the miracle, the high wills, the church, Escobar, it was all stowed away down here, and also kept down here, was this. Exposito. Proof that the miracle casts its light upon children as well. Exposito was the son of a woman burned alive by inquisitors. When she was taken to the flames, she begged the inquisitor that held her son to not let him see what was going to happen. As the baby cried, the inquisitor blindfolded him so that he wouldn't be witness to his mother's death. As she began to burn, she begged an onlooker with a kind soul to build a wicker figure in her image so her son could rest in its arms so he wouldn't miss her. The onlooker did so, and when Cvstodia was placed into the wicker figure's arms, he stopped crying. This was known to be a miracle. The Penitent One stops what is happening here, puts an end to the crying child so they can move on and hopefully find peace in the arms of their true mother. And after the arena, just up a lift, the Penitent One finds another archbishop's body, which again fades away, leaving behind another mask. This one with the confessions of a man named Crescente. He wrote of a man that seemed to describe Orestes, who searched for answers to the impossible within the Mother of Mothers. That's where he got the first mask from. But Crescente also wrote of another man named Dolphos, who betrayed the church and took refuge in the snowy mountains, the convent, where he fought the Lady of the Charred Visage. It must be there. There is a section of the convent that he wasn't able to reach. It was much too high. He's found no clues as to there being a hidden pathway, so maybe there's a second way into the convent from above. Well, as he thinks through his options and places he could explore for secret paths into the convent, he goes about tying up loose ends. Within Albaro, the Kissers of Wounds are well provided for, as are those within the church where the Order of the True Shrine is working. Since he's here, he drops off the bone pieces that he's collected at the ossuary and finds that it's enough to open the secret door that has been taunting him for so long now. As soon as it's open, singing starts to spill out. Bone, ashes, and song. The fourth visage is still waiting for their eye to be returned, and he's found where the second one is, finally. The bone collector warns him that the lady who sings does so for the bones, but will not allow anyone to interrupt her song. He also warns the Penitent One to be careful of the secret that defeating her may lead him to. The song belongs to fair Isidora, voice of the dead. In life, she was known as a stage performer who wore flamboyant outfits. One night, a group of children ran up to Isidora and asked her to sing them a song. But strangely, she did not. She instead walked towards these very crypts beneath Albaro and sang verses no one had heard before. She then entered the crypt, closed the gates behind her, and walked into the darkness. Her voice gradually faded, but a choir rose up from the silence as though dozens were singing together. Isidora never returned, and became known as the voice of the dead. Here, she finally falls. No longer will her voice sing the stories of tragedy that the bones have spoken through her. Her suffering in the darkness has ended, and the right eye of the traitor falls from her scythe as the penitent's prize. The silent warrior takes both the eyes back to the fourth visage. With the return of its right eye, it is able to see light again, shining in from the ceiling, and it relays feeling joy at this blessing. With the return of its left eye, it is able to completely see the awful prison it has been in this entire time. Now, it's time for their secret to be told. The fourth visage, the traitor, tells the Penitent One that those most devout are so because their very souls are bound with invisible chains. These chains are from where the high will dwells, but those chains can be severed. The traitor gives the Penitent One the true heart of his blade, the apodictic heart of the mea culpa, something they've kept safe since they were banished from the dream. This will awaken the true guilt within his blade, the true power within it, so he can sever the link between the high wills and its most devout warrior, break the chains that bind them. They tell him to find the one whose penance is made clear on her helmet, for she is the truest, most righteous, and unwavering of all, Chrysanta. Her penance is blindness. Her helmet clearly shows this. She could be an ally rather than a foe. The wound he is going to inflict upon her soul is going to be her salvation from the high wills. That is all the fourth visage has for the Penitent One. Their fate rests in his choices now. He chooses to put the apodictic heart into the blade, permanently casting all other potential powers away. With still no leads on how to reach the final of the three masks, the Penitent One returns to the Mother of Mothers and places the second mask into the elevator. It takes him part of the way up the cathedral, to a place that he's not yet been. So for a while, he runs and climbs through the old buildings, across rooftops which lead him to the outskirts of the Mother of Mothers. He's able to take in the entirety of the so-called church. It truly is more like a city. He runs along the ramparts, silhouetted against a never-setting sun, only to be met with two wardens. They're guarding something here, just like the warden back at the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrows was. What are they protecting? well, that turns out to be a prison. There are still prisoners and guards here, though the blessing of the miracle has effectively stripped them of those titles and equalized their status. They're all violent, unthinking in their need to inflict pain. The prison itself is hard to navigate, with pivotal routes forward being behind locked doors. It would make escape for inmates more difficult if this place were operating properly. You can't get too far with just one key. The Penitent One is able to track them down one by one, slowly make progress through the cells, but there's been no sign of a second path he could use to reach the convent in the mountains. When it seems that he is finally nearing the end of this hellhole while approaching a treasure on the ground, the floors beneath him give out and the Penitent One is plunged into the pit of a new terror. This is Circe, a captive of this place, whose undiscerning violence make him a threat to all. In life, Circe was accused of heresy, and though innocent, he was burned for it. Those who witnessed it cried and prayed for Circe, and the miracle responded with its own mercy. Circe was revived from the embers, only to again burn to death in the flames of the miracle. He eternally revived only to again be burned to death in torture unparalleled. Even during this fight, he burns into nothing, only to reappear as himself, though he no longer screams in agony. Not even when struck by the mea culpa. Not a sound escapes Circe when he is finally and completely killed by the Penitent One. The way forward is completely open to him now. Deogracius awaits him beyond the cell, and he tells the Penitent One about Circe's unjust death. Killing the poor creature was truly a mercy. He backtracks a bit, goes back to that room that Circe destroyed the floor of, to grab the treasure that was on the ground, and well, damn. The key of the high peaks. Circe was using it as bait. And it must be someplace nearby if he had it, right? The Penitent One finds his way out of the prison, back up onto the ramparts, where a hidden lift is waiting. The key of the high peaks gets it moving, and it takes him back up to the mountains to the convent, precisely where he couldn't reach before. It took a lot of time and searching, but he finally found it. Someplace around here is the final mask. And after all that he has done to get here, it's mercifully easy to find. Up a few ladders, across a walkway, there is the body of an archbishop holding the mirrored mask of Delphos. This is the last item he needs to reach the top of the Mother of Mothers, where His Holiness Escribar is. Chrysanta has not been seen since their first fight long ago, after he'd been freshly revived and taken to the mea culpa. But if she is the most devout of Escribar's warriors, then she will make herself known before he confronts His Holiness. So he takes this chance to go all about Cvstodia to finish errands and quests with friends and acquaintances. So many have been helped by this emotionless, unspeaking man. By all rights, he should be terrifying, but he has become a beacon of hope and goodness. And he did it without saying a word. When he is sure that all is well, that they'll all be alright without him around, he goes back to the Mother of Mothers, to that final lift, and he puts in the third mask. It takes him to the highest tower of the church, where Chrysanta is indeed waiting. She speaks of his sins and crimes against the church, against the miracle. Because of his deeds, we, she says, have been entrusted with ending him. Chrysanta had told him long ago that if he returned to life, they would meet again, and his second kneeling would take place. She intends to see him ended, and his every deed erased. But the fourth visage told him that Chrysanta was chained by the miracle, bound to it. She does this as a tool of the high wills. The traitor told him not to kill her, but to instead break those chains. The two fight viciously, with Chrysanta taking the loss this time. However, there is an intervention. The High Wills know that the Penitent One's blade contains the apodictic heart. It is a blade which can break her chains. The High Will intervenes to restore her, and whispers in her ear a warning against the mea culpa. She must escape its kiss or die before it can pierce her. They fight once again, with the Penitent One carrying wounds from the first battle, as she stands restored. She swings her own blade, knowing that there can be nothing else after this for one of them. She carries the burden of the High Will's whispering orders into her ear, and her allegiance to Escribar will not allow her to back down. Her shackles will not allow her to back down. This second round, she is once again defeated. She does not ask for mercy of any sort. She bravely tells him to go on and purge her very soul. She does so not knowing that that's precisely what he intends to do. The apodictic heart of the mea culpa reveals the massive chains that bind Chrysanta, which she herself cannot even see. and the pain of it. She can feel that he has broken something ancient within her. Her faith and her soul have been wounded, but she doesn't yet understand what has happened. She tells him that they will meet back at the chapel where they first fought, where he took the mea culpa, where Esdras too is waiting. She wishes to be left alone with this wound. The Penitent One quickly returns to the chapel. Esdras is overseeing Cvstodia. She is his captain, after all, someone that he deeply admires, that he wanted to prove himself to. He knows something within her has changed, but he can't grasp what. She's kneeled over in some sort of pain, though she tells them that the crimson ribbons she wears protects her from wounds. This is something of the soul, not the body. She will recover in time. The Penitent One and the mea culpa are the only things that can stop the eternal cycle they're all in. Escobar must be dealt with, must be given mercy in defeat and death. But there is something higher than the church, more powerful than the miracle, the high wills. What Deogracius and the Fourth Visage said were true. They are beyond the dream with the ancient eternal procession. Long ago, the Fourth Visage, the traitor, gave Cvstodia its holy wound, in hopes that it would open her silver eyes to the truth. But she did not accept the blessing. She took it with her, but remained loyal to Escobar. This final wound is the holy wound of abnegation, and whoever it is bestowed upon will suffer so deeply that repentance will be unworthy of them. They will be pure, and their guilt will be a perpetual state. It is the deepest and most forbidden of pain, and the one who carries it will be worthy of standing before the high wills. Now marked by all 4 wounds, the Penitent One can ascend, and Cvstodia is going with him. He must carve the way forward for her, but when he needs her, beyond that dream, at the eternal procession before the high wills, she will be there. First things first, though, Escobar. The walkway to the throne room is pristine, untouched by the clear destruction and madness of the world far, far below. The long-sought throne room is still blanketed in ashes from when Escobar burned so long ago. He hears His Holiness before he sees him, speaking of seeing the Penitent One in dreams, where he has tried to talk to him, introduce himself, but now he finally can. Though, for all his titles and power, Escobar confesses that he knows almost nothing about the Penitent One. He reveals himself to be a bloodied, red, withered man. He wears little armor, and his weapon is modest, because the miracle is within him. What more could he need? He curses the Penitent One in name, blesses him in death, a gesture not done in kindness, and they finally begin their battle. Escobar is not a sword fighter, nor is he quick. He relies heavily on the powers of the miracle to move and defend him. When he does attack, it's highly destructive and full of variety. But he is still a husk, an old, tired man, and the powers the Penitent One has gained in his journeys quickly break Escobar down. Their first round is only a few minutes. But too is it merely the breaking of his body. He is no longer bound in his own flesh. He awakens anew as the son of the true miracle, with a massive form to match the new rank. The flesh of Escobar is now protected by an armor shell, and he wears around his neck a vial that holds the nude image of what he once was. He's imprisoned in the glass, as though he's only worthy of being worn as jewelry. The Penitent One strikes the weapon of Escobar, which controls the elemental attacks made possible by the miracle. Repeatedly striking the eye within it opens the mask of the behemoth, making the red face of His Holiness vulnerable to attack. It's an easy equation that is nasty and brutal. The attacks the Penitent One has to dodge, combined with required platforming, makes it a balancing act, and failing to perform can have consequences. It's several rounds between them before this bastard form of His Holiness is brought down, but from its corpse, something emerges, with its eyes raised towards the sky. The 5-armed being doesn't say a word, but ascends through the dream. The Penitent One, however, is returned to the Mother of Mothers. He stands before the mountain of ash, where atop the turned throne rests. So many tried to climb this, to reach the throne, compelled on by the miracle itself, and they all fell into it, later emerging as monstrous, violent beings. Deogracius stands before it, waiting for the Penitent One, so that he may be a guide. He tells the Silent One that he has freed Escobar from his torment, but now he is on the other side of the dream, walking beside the ancient eternal procession. And what will he be? The High Wills would not just let its sentinel go, right? Deogracius bids the Penitent One to climb the ashes, reach the throne, and have his final communion with the miracle. As the Penitent One takes his steps, his feet do not sink. He runs to the top of the mountain of ashes as though he were on solid ground, and at the top, a platform rises, lifting he and the throne up high, through the dream itself, to what lies beyond. He has reached the afterlife, where the eternal procession carries on all around him. Escobar is not far away, or what remains of him. He has been made into something new, and his calling is to defend the high wills from the Penitent One. As though in an attempt to misguide him, Escobar asks him what he hopes to find here. After all, this place is merely blinding gray light and an unending horizon, and he claims that the Penitent One's penance has ended, so he has no business here. But one more time, Escobar will face off against this blasphemer. As they fight across the procession tents, Escobar tells him that his actions are pointless. None can deny or defeat the miracle. It is all-knowing and all-powerful. Yet, has the Penitent One not proven that to be false time and time again? Whatever wields the miracle is fallible, clumsy. Its hold can be broken, and Escobar's words prove that it can be driven to desperation to protect itself. When the Sentinel winds up for a massive attack against the Penitent One, Cvstodia appears, having finally made her way to the procession as well. Her crimson bindings shield him from Escobar's greatest attack, though it temporarily knocks the wind out of Cvstodia to do so. As Mea Culpa's strikes cut away at Escobar, he laments the feeling of it. He knows that a pure death is approaching him, which not even a miracle could prevent. In a last-ditch effort to stop the Penitent One, he unloads everything he has, but again he fails. Escobar is done. It's time for his suffering to end. He acknowledges what is to come. He and all custodians that loved and served him will fall from this place, but he does not say where they will land. What awaits the souls of those freed from the eternal procession? Is there something beyond it, or will it be nothingness? It's time for him to go find out. The Penitent One cuts him straight down the middle, and the corpse of Escobar falls down into the clouds. Cvstodia joins him. He must take the lead in this, but she will be at his back to aid him and partake in the ending of the High Wills. By all rights, the honor of performing this blasphemy is his. The High Wills are three who speak as one, two feminine and one masculine. They chastise him for bringing guilt, the mea culpa, into this realm. His presence is breaking the law, it's desecrating holiness. They introduce themselves and claim that there is no miracle that they did not create. They acknowledge that this ancient eternal procession is older than even them, made from the self-imposed condemnations of the custodians. Their own dreams woven together into a kingdom, and the High Wills wish to use this domain for themselves, to unite the faith of all who suffered here into one act of adoration for themselves, so they could have more power, so they could feed off the eternal procession and become a god. No fancy, flowery words will change the reality of that ambition. The more fervent they made the custodians via the miracle, the stronger the faith of the eternal procession, the more elevated they became. They know these two penitents are here to destroy them, destroy all they've done as a way to atone for their own sins. They claim that doing this will make the miracle bereft of power, as though that were a bad thing for the world. Nothing will stay the hands of the Penitent One or Cvstodia, so in a final act of malice or perhaps desperation to dissuade them, they promise that they will both suffer eternal condemnation. There will be no peace for them in life or death, hunger or thirst, in sleep or wakefulness. They will be buried in ashes, they will be loathed in the memories of all, their names forgotten. If they do this, there will be no penance that could wash this sin away. Does not stop them or even give them a moment of pause. The Penitent One takes the first strike against them, taking the eye out of one with the mea culpa, as Cvstodia descends and cuts down its center. The death of the High Wills changes this kingdom. The eternal procession is no longer here, the sky is bright and clear, and the only one here with the Penitent One is the Twisted One himself, the young man who suffered the first miracle. He reaches out to the Penitent One, gently touches his shoulder, and then fades away. It's not clear where he and those who were part of the eternal procession will go, but at least it's not here. Hopefully they're taken to a place of peace and goodness. The mea culpa too fades away. The guilt it was born from is gone. Its purpose has been served. And the Penitent One himself, his life was sustained by the miracle. The destruction of the High Wills has ended that. The question still remains, why did the miracle bring him back? If it was all-knowing, then it knew he was going to ascend and destroy the High Wills, end the eternal procession, yet it continued to give him life. Was this its wish? Without the blessings of the miracle, the Penitent One returns to his death. Cvstodia carries him back to Cvstodia as Deogracias humbly holds his foot, a symbolic gesture of respect and care. Cvstodia lays him in a coffin and says a prayer before entombing the Penitent One within. Deogracias will remain here to tend to this resting place for all the rest of his days. But Cvstodia, she knows there will be consequences for betraying the High Wills, and there are still powerful beings out there that are loyal to the miracle. Foremost amongst them is Eviterno, the first of the penitents. Even now, he was peerless in power thanks to the gifts bestowed upon him by the miracle. Eviterno believed that this new beginning for the world was the dawn of a new penance, a penance which would also herald the end. He knew that he was to find Cvstodia, to deliver her death, and then wait in perpetual contemplation before her body until the miracle was ready to return. That would be his penance, and it was one that he fearlessly accepted. The Arch-Confraternity of Penitents was assembled, 4 ancient champions of the miracle with Eviterno as their leader. The existence of these 5 ensured that the miracle never really left Cvstodia, even if it was weak. For a long time, Cvstodia fought the Arch-Confraternity. She brought them one hell of a war, but Eviterno and Cvstodia found one another. Violence took place between them. Cvstodia was delivered a devastating wound. She knew that this was her end, so she plunged her own ribbon-bound blade through her chest. It was her final sacrifice, her blood-bathed weapon, able to pierce the very heart of those who carried the miracle within them. It would be an aid to its future wielder. Her part in this tale was done. And, as was his penance, Eviterno, the first of the penitents, sat before the body of Cvstodia to await the return of the miracle. It would take time, hundreds of years of silence and loneliness. As the ages passed, he waited for the one that he knew he was destined to meet. The Cvstodia we came to know will pass into legends, places, relics, and names called ancient as the world changed, yet in many regards it remained much the same. Albero, the mother of mothers, the convent, the cistern, Yondo, all of it faded from memory. From the rubble came a new city, the city of the blessed name, and a variety of other regions to replace the old. No longer was the church a dominating force within Cvstodia, but the absence of that old religious fervor didn't mean suffering stopped. Humanity is many things, and leading amongst them is cruel, as though we ourselves are miracles, eternally blessing ourselves and each other to suffer. The miracle, too, passed into story and legend, yet there were some who remembered it in name, and it held a place in the unconsciousness of the masses. The Arch-Confraternity of Penitents remained vigil and never waned in their loyalty, even those that were part of the Arch-Confraternity unwillingly. So even if it held on by mere threads, the miracle never really faded away or lost influence. And again, it was only a matter of time before circumstances overlapped with preparation. Let us know the story of a desperate couple and then the wish of a child. These two so longed to conceive a child, but were unable to do so. These two, so humble, never wavered in their faith, and in their desperation they prayed for a miracle. They gave themselves over to it entirely, wishing for a blessing that would allow them to have a baby. So strong was their faith and desire that the miracle took hold and responded, just like centuries prior, when a young man sat upon a log and prayed for punishment, which became the first miracle. But this time, it was a prayer of desperate love that hailed the return of an ancient force. The miracle blessed them, but its long absence made this an erroneous act. The mother, as she would become known as, gave birth to the miracle's attempt to manifest itself into the world. She gave birth to a plague. From her body, it swept the lands like a contagion, bringing disease, deformity, and pain. The father cried out and held the mother as she died. All within that room were doomed, save one. The innocent young man who was aiding the mother in giving birth. He became known as the Witness. He would be witness to every event which led to the miracle's return, every act throughout hundreds of years, thought, sin. He saw the suffering of those who cried out to the miracle, who gave it power. Why it chose him for this is unknown. But his rebirth, this new life, was so short that he was kept holy and pure, his tongue uncorrupted, having seen the truth of the miracle, yet never having spoken of sin. Faith and fervor very suddenly returned to Cvstodia. Capricious, fickle, volatile, the lands began to fall and crumble, rot and decay. Who knows how long this went on for, but in the end, Cvstodia returned to that oh-so-familiar state. And now, let us know the story of a boy whose good heart changed everything. The boy walked alone through the desert, malnourished, his feet wounded from the hot sand and rocks, but in the distance was hope, the city of the blessed name. He hoped to find sanctuary there, but when he finally made it to the city, those hopes turned to dust. It was a miserable place. People starved in the streets. There was only the sound of weeping to be heard. Like so many other places within Cvstodia, it was hellish and full of grief. The boy, too, became full of despair, but when he looked up to the sky, he saw the most wondrous sunset. Clouds dyed pink and orange, a setting sun barely falling behind the mountains far away. In his eyes, the shape of a great heart was molded into the scene, and it inspired the boy to make a wish. He wished for the clouds to take the shape that he saw, to become real, to become an icon to represent all these broken people, so that everyone would experience the sorrow he felt from witnessing it, and so that everyone who did suffer would know that they weren't alone. His wish was granted. On the shoulders of 3 great statues, the center of the city of the blessed name, where Evitana resided in perpetual contemplation, was lifted high into the sky. And then, just as the boy had begged, a beating heart appeared in the clouds. But the miracle did not stop there. Within this beating heart, it placed its own icon, a being colossal and perfect, slumbering and growing. Soon it would be born. And this very much caught the attention of something else, something divine, from a place called On High, the seat and beginning of all that was holy. Whatever it was did not like what the miracle was doing. It did not want whatever it was growing within that heart to be born. But for whatever reason, it could not itself intervene. It would need a representative, a champion, to do so on its behalf. So, the enigmatic deity from On High found the dead Penitent One, his sarcophagus resting in the arms of the long-dead Deogracias, and returned him to life. He rose from death with nothing but a few bottles and trinkets. Hundreds of years had gone by. He did not recognize this world, but in intrigue, he began to move forward. First, he is presented with a choice of weapons. After all, his penance and deeds are done through violence. He chooses first the sword, called Ruego al Alba, as it's a familiar weapon type, and right now, he could use familiarity. It is put to test immediately against the Faceless One, Chisel of Oblivion. It is a fine fight and a worthy test of skill. He takes a few hits to the face, but the Penitent One finds his stride and conquers this first trial. The Faceless One bleeds from his side at defeat, much like the Warden of the Silent Sorrow did. Back then, the Penitent One had filled his helmet with the blood of the Warden, and he baptized himself in it before his journey. But not this time. There will be no baptisms. The door forward is open to him, and beyond his once crypt, a new face greets him. She is Annunciata, and like Deogracia so long ago, she records the deeds of those that she watches over, and will act as a guide to the Penitent One. She says that she hails from On High, and the miracle has descended over the city of the blessed name. Soon it will give birth to a new child, which will be its icon on earth. Through this being, all nations and faiths will become subservient to the miracle, and it will ascend as a god, just like the High Wills tried to do. Annunciata warns him that a group called the Ark Confraternity is expecting him, and its guardians will oppose him directly. She tells him their names and which confraternity they represent. Within 3 of them, the miracle instilled 3 regrets. Each regret represents one of the massive statues holding up the city of the blessed name. If he can reveal the 3 regrets, the statues will allow him to ascend into the city, which will put him within striking distance of the heart. But there is a 5th that he must be aware of, their leader, Eviterno, father of the penitents, who waits for him in the soaring city. She reveals the location of all 4 guardians on his map, but the path to each is one that he will have to find himself. The methods of the miracle are very similar to those employed by the High Wills oh so long ago. 3 keys voluntarily instilled by the miracle, 3 trials to overcome, ascending once they're all obtained, a champion at the end empowered by the miracle. Were the High Wills really the one in control back then? Is the miracle mimicking their attempt, or was this all planned by the miracle from the start? If so, was it expecting the Penitent One to wake up? Through the dark forest of ruins, roamed by the maddened victims of the miracle, he finds the outskirts of the city of the blessed name. And unlike Albaro so many ages ago, this place is relatively lively. There are people in the alleys, on the streets, in their homes. Within a workshop, he meets a blind master sculptor named Montañez, whose purpose is to carve out the shapes of true saints so they can be revered by the devout. Montañez's blindness has never slowed him, for the miracle shows him where to hammer and chip. What he is currently carving in wood is to be his last, the figure of the most blessed lady. He asks the Penitent One to bring him any fine tools, pigments, varnishes, and chisels he may find in his journey. In return, he will create for the silent warrior small altar pieces to carry upon his back, which will grant him an array of powers to freely choose from. Many of these altar pieces are in the shapes of people that the Penitent One knew. Dio Gracias, Nacimiento, Crisanta, Tirso, Viridiana, they've all passed into legend now, but at least he has these to remember them all by. While walking through the city's underground, the sound of a scream shakes the walls around him. There are so many paths before him to choose from, a massive map to fill in. This is as good a place to start as any, so he plunges into the darkness and chases the scream. For hours, perhaps even days, he runs, climbs, and kills his way through the tunnels beneath the city. It's a grand exploratory phase of building out shortcuts, getting familiar with the terrain, obtaining new powers and abilities, finding items for folks back in the city to be delivered when there's time. Deep underground, he meets an interesting woman clad in green and black. Yerma is her name, and she is here to hunt something. She doesn't care who the Penitent One is. That he's here now is enough for her to look kindly upon him. She is willed forward by her own deep hatred, which she admits has blinded her to reason. She gives him a gift, the tip of a weapon which was once a holy artifact, something she stole from an old church. But she doesn't stay to tell him precisely what has her so enraged. They will meet again, and perhaps then she'll find the words for it. The Penitent One doesn't find the source of that great scream he heard so long ago, and after dropping by the city to resupply and drop things off, he decides that he'll try up, go above the city, into the aqueducts, which takes him into rolling hills of rock and sand, where entombments were done long ago. There seems to be nothing peaceful about this place. Even the beings depicted in the dunes and hills seem to be suffering, with their eyes and broken arms lifted up towards the sky. Hidden away in a ruined alcove, he finds the next of his great weapons, Veredicto. It will open more ways forward to him, offer a different approach to combat should he desire, and it just looks nasty. The massive 2-handed flail could break any human in half on impact, and he throws it around like it's a toy. Deep into the tomb ruins, he meets that woman clad in green and black again, Yerma. She still speaks with anger in her voice, but she accepts his presence. She explains that her life has been a struggle to fulfill a promise as old as these lands, and does he wish to meet her? He says yes, and she begins to tell her story. When Yerma was a girl, she was able to escape the miracle, which blessed her home with the horror of deformity. The city was settled near a lake, which an old bell had sank into the bottom of. One day, the bell chimed from deep underwater, and when the city folks looked into the lake, their faces began to distort in the ripples. Their reflections were taken from them. Yerma fled in terror, and from afar she watched her home and kin become monstrous and deformed. She does not say who she is yet, though. That's another part of the story that she's not willing to tell yet. She asks if he wants to join her in the next battle, which she knows will be against another of the miracle's great creations. Even if it's not the she that Yerma is seeking, she's still down to ride or die, which gets a hell yes from the Penitent One, in the form of a head nod. In just the next room is a foe that they will face together in defiance of the miracle. Rodimus spent his entire life listening to confessions and sin. He heard so many that, even in death, he could hear the echoes of their guilt, begging to be heard and to be allowed to confess. No matter the words spoken, though, Rodimus never wept for a single one of them. He found the voices to be incessant. The voice of the miracle itself broke through and commanded him to guard one of its sacred regrets. When he obeyed, he finally wept. The Penitent One and Yerma put him down together, freeing Rodimus from the miracle's influence. Yerma cannot follow the Penitent One here. He is taken to that kingdom of dreams that seems so familiar, yet it's changed greatly in the centuries since he was last here. It's not one of the holy guardian visages that is here this time, it's the soul of Rodimus. This is his vigil before he takes his final journey into whatever is beyond the dream. This time, Rodimus is not hearing a confession, he's giving his own, and the Penitent One listens to his every word. Rodimus confesses to the hardness of his heart and life, and he didn't feel sorrow until he was the one made to suffer. He shares with the Penitent One the sacred regret. It's part of a story. There was a married couple which longed to conceive a child but could not. In their desperation, they prayed to the miracle for help, though it was believed to have been extinct. And that is all the Penitent One is told. That is the sacred regret that Rodimus guarded. The old soul is out of time. His eyes are drooping, and he's ready to greet whatever is awaiting him on the other side. The Penitent One leaves this dark dream behind, and the 3 statues, which hold up part of the city in the sky, descend 1/3 their length. Annunziata greets him back in the living world to confirm his success and to bid him on to find the other 2 guardians. For a while, he continues to clear the old tombs and the aqueducts. He takes precious items back to the city to deliver to those who need them. He barters with a cast of interesting characters to resupply, and he decides to journey east. He finds his way through the ruins of a city where implements of torture and judgment are strewn about. Whatever happened here must have been brutal, but he doesn't stay for long. He chances upon another dark forest, but this one is set beside a lake, and strangely, the waters reflect a town which is not on the shores. Deeper into the spooky woods, the Penitent One finds a horse and rider, pulling a carriage shaped like a bed. The rider says that this is the procession of shadows, and if he can offer a false coin with jagged edges, forgotten features which has no value, then he will guide the Penitent One through darkness to the most remote places of the land. And he happens to just have such a coin, so why not? He pays the fare, and the procession of shadows carries him away to a place that was previously unreachable. It's to the tunnels beneath the city, but why would the procession bring him here? A few obstacles later, and after shortcuts are opened up, the Penitent One finds the Mother of Mothers, or rather the ruins of it. So ancient Cvstodia wasn't just left to crumble away, it was buried and forgotten, like an inconvenient secret. It was once a sprawling cathedral, housing site of the first miracle, the keep of His Holiness Escobar before and after he was touched by the miracle. It reached high into the sky long ago, but now it's ruined beneath the dirt. Had Cvstodia remembered the Mother of Mothers and what took place here, what would the world be like now? He doesn't remain for too long, instead choosing to move onto a haunted city called the Streets of Wakes. Though it's a hostile place, there are some interesting and non-aggressive characters to be found. The first being a hand that demands his fingers be sucked by everyone that enters the chapel. The Penitent One opts to just kneel politely instead, don't worry. This hand claims that he will be the Penitent One's only refuge and comfort, that those who worship him are granted the favor of holiness itself. He is truly insufferable, but he does offer greater powers if the Penitent One brings him what he wants. Well, turns out this isn't the only hand being in Cvstodia. There are at least 6 more of them, but he gathered and imprisoned them all, so that he could claim to be a divine being, so that he would be loved and adored. The soft-spoken Sagrario has set up a safe alcove here. She has no ulterior motives or devious backstory. She's simply knots rosaries as her penance, and she will gladly do the same for the Penitent One if he brings her what she needs to do it. The cries of mourners catches his attention on the streets. A house is full of people weeping over someone in a bed. Kneeling at her side, he is taken into her dream. The old woman demands that he finds her 5 daughters, snuffs out the candles at their bedsides, so that the girls can be returned here, and then he may enter their dreams and end their mourning. This mother figure's voice is not kindly or soft, though. Some of her words seem to be spoken with spite. If the Penitent One decides to find her 5 daughters, they will all be returned here, and a vigil will be readied, where he might earn a most precious reward. By the time he has chosen his next target, much of the lands have been partially uncovered or delved into, and he's found the third of his great weapons, the quick blades called Sarmiento and Centella. He is well prepared for what will be next, the Palace of the Embroideries. If one were to look up in this palace, they would see what appears to be golden webs on the walls. There are people encased in it. One may not think it, but the work of a talented embroiderer would be highly sought. They would create magnificent decor for churches, cathedrals, faction dwellings, but perhaps more importantly, the vestments and attire of clergy and members of the church. Be it designing or maintaining the dress code, it fell to the embroiderers to craft that attire, making them valuable assets and highly desired artists. The work of a talented embroiderer could last hundreds of years if properly maintained. It's no wonder that in the lands of Cvstodia, they were given an entire palace. The many bodies all over these grounds were people of importance and wealth, who craved riches and status. The fine attire of the embroiderers would grant them such, but they were never allowed to leave. All visitors were encased in the golden threads they so longed to possess. He meets the keeper of the palace in a dark hole, where she resides amongst the bodies of her victims. Ospina, the lady embroiderer. She speaks of them with contempt, and laments the silent boredom of her halls. She intends to do to the Penitent One what she has done to countless others, embroider his flesh in torment, turning him into a tapestry of blood and gold. Their battle is flamboyant. It's a display of speed and talent between fine sword fighters. What magic is used between them is a complement to their swordplay. Tactics to throw their foe off guard, just enough for them to get close. The Penitent One spots Ospina's vulnerabilities, though. Though her movesets are grand and cover the field, sometimes avoiding them is as simple as finding the right place to stand. The Penitent One defeats the Lady Embroiderer, one of the keepers of a sacred regret, and he is taken back into the dream. Ospina's soul is waiting for him, bloodied, cut, and broken. Like Radames, she is about to take her final journey through the dream, into whatever lies beyond. She speaks of who she was, as though to memorialize herself. She knows that where she's going won't be adorned by fine gold, and she regrets that she'll never get to use her sword again. But before she goes, she tells him more of the stories that Radames began, the second part of the sacred regret. There was a married couple which longed to conceive a child but could not. In their desperation, they prayed to the miracle for help, though it was believed to have been extinct. So moved by their dedication, the miracle returned to Cvstodia. It awoke from its long slumber. The miracle granted their wish, and they were blessed with the child they so desired. That is all she offers of the story. It is time for Ospina to close her eyes, so the Penitent One ends his vigil and returns to the world of the living. Outside, the 3 statues holding up part of the City of Blessed Name once again descend 1/3 their length. Whatever they hold is now almost within reach. Only one sacred regret remains. Annunciata again appears to confirm his success and to urge him forward to the last regret. The trail takes the Penitent One to the Crown of Towers, which once upon a time seemed to be a stunning place. It's one of the higher points in the land, with sturdy walls and enchantingly simple architecture, which allowed sunlight and open sky to flood through it all. Little occupies the sadly empty halls of the Crown of Towers now, save those infected by the miracle's blessing. High atop the towers, within the belfry, the Penitent One meets the one who keeps safe the last sacred regret, Blasphemous, a dead man kept within a metallic body, who is therefore incorrupt. He calls it his cage, shaped in the form of what he was in life, his own head in the abdomen behind glass, and he is directed by forces which undermine his own will. He lives, yes, but when he closes his eyes, he knows that truly he is dead. Blasphemous wields a crushing battering ram as his weapon, which causes whirlwinds of fire to burst through the belfry. And although a large being of metal, he moves with surprising ease. Not as fast as Ospina, but his hits are more substantial. Little is known of this man, save that he does this against his own will. When he is first knocked down, something more is revealed of him. Within his weapon is the sleeping Infanta, a child of a sovereign, a child of distinct privilege. Was Blasphemous a ruler in life? Was he the man spoken of in letters around the towers who wrote pages of vile jealousy in his quiet night hours? If that was him in life, it's not who he is now. When Infanta is dwindled down, the two of them unite in one last attempt to stop the Penitent One. But they're not enough. He destroys the third guardian and follows Blasphemous into the dream to see what this broken man has to say. Blasphemous' soul rests as though captured within a painting. These are his final moments before his journey past the dream begins. He does not speak of his past, confess to any sins, or show any regret. His body has been returned to him, and though he feels trembling agony, it's a sweet pain because it's his own. He reveals the last of the sacred regrets to the Penitent One. There was a married couple which longed to conceive a child but could not. In their desperation, they prayed to the miracle for help, though it was believed to have been extinct. So moved by their dedication, the miracle returned to Cvstodia. It awoke from its long slumber. The miracle granted their wish. They were blessed with the child they so desired. But the miracle was not omnipotent. It erred in this miracle, and instead the mother gave birth to a plague. It would spread like wildfire. All within that room were doomed, save the young man aiding the mother's birth. He was made to be deformed and became the witness. That is the last of the sacred regrets. Finally, Blasphemous can rest and travel beyond the dream. The Penitent One departs, and outside, the statues holding up part of the city of the blessed name fully descend. The heart is nearly within reach now. Outta once again meets him in the living world. To confirm that he has succeeded in this first series of trials, she bids him to carry on and to not let doubt hold him back. Something about this is troubling. It's been far too simple and straightforward. The miracle may be flawed and fickle, but it's surely aware of the Penitent One's actions. It must know that the city has descended, that he is coming, yet nothing truly divine has stepped in to stop him. Could it perhaps be that it wants him to climb the city of the blessed name? Could the miracle benefit from his presence? Could it use him? And would he want that to be his fate? He was once afforded the chance to replace Escobar, to sit upon the turned throne. Is that the sort of power that he would refuse twice? Well, of course it is. He's seen the deeds of this so-called miracle. His brotherhood was wiped out for standing in defiance of Escobar. Before he reaches the peak of the city, he will search for answers as to what awaits him. He will not submit himself to anything other than complete penance. The Penitent One returns to the Mother of Mothers to search its halls for possible answers. And though he doesn't find what he's looking for, he does come across something that was once of great importance, the knot of the three words. Hundreds of years ago, Dio Gracias stood here at his side and told him the story of the first miracle, and he can still hear his old guide's voice bounding around these empty halls. The tree itself has long since withered up and died. Beneath the Mother of Mothers was once a great forbidden library, but it too is long lost. What rests there now is a small area called Beneath Her Sacred Grounds, and to his surprise, the Penitent One finds Yerma here, continuing her hunt. She tells him a bit more of her story. Her home once rested beside a lake, and when the miracle returned, a bell at the bottom of it rang out, and all who looked within the waters had their reflections captured, turning them into horrific beasts. Yerma was able to flee that terrible event, but watched from afar as madness consumed her home. There was more to that tale, though, why the miracle manifested this way. It was because of the vanity of a woman who lived in that city. She brought the curse upon them. The woman lived in the palace and believed her beauty to be unnaturally divine. She would watch herself for days in the reflection of the lake, spellbound by her self-admiration. She wished to keep her beautiful reflection for herself and prayed that no one would ever see it. Her wish was granted. The bell chimed, the reflections of all were captured within the rippling waters, and madness took the city. Yerma has a vendetta against this lady, whose vanity brought so much suffering. She asks if he wants a combat partner for his next confrontation, which he says yes to. There is a powerful foe just ahead. They can hear the sound of metal scraping against stone. It's an enemy that they will face off against together. The one they've been hearing is Aphialor, Sentinel of the Emery. He is surrounded by his own works, blades which decorate everything about the chamber. He doesn't say a word at the Penitent One's approach. Instead, he places his grinding wheel on his back and starts swinging. Aphialor is a strange being. His movements are that of a lumbering beast. He uses his hands as he walks, resharpens his blade using the wheel on his back before taking wide swings. He throws smaller weapons around like they're volleys of arrows, and he spins to cover massive areas between them. He's hard to stay close to, and dangerous from a distance. He is a being clouded in mystery. Why is he so deep underground? Why is he sharpening all these weapons? Who does he serve? Why does he not speak? Those are not answers needed, though. The duo end Aphialor, and something quite unexpected happens after. The Penitent One is taken away to some place new. The dream reflection of a very real place, a church or a chapel of some sort. He meets here a young man with golden hair, with a single bristly black wing growing from his chest. He tells the Penitent One that they're in the chapel of the 5 doves, and that he is the voice of the witness. His body, his corpse, was encased in this shrine of crystal, like a relic to be preserved. The young man, the witness, tells the Penitent One that if he wishes to pursue a path in defiance of the miracle, if he wishes to avoid the birth of the miracle's child, then he needs to find the witness's uncorrupted tongue. Then he will be able to whisper forbidden things to the Penitent One, which will guide him down that path. That's all the information he gives. He sends the Penitent One back to the living world to contemplate his next move. Well, why would the witness ally himself with the Penitent One? Hopefully that is an answer that he'll get in time. He begins a new search, under order from the witness, to find his uncorrupted tongue. The Penitent One's search takes him all around Cvstodia. He finds tools for the master sculptor, brings a coin to the procession of shadows, snuffs out the candles of the grieving mother's daughters, continually upgrades and empowers his own gear, clears out the merchandise of several shop owners, but he never finds an uncorrupted tongue. But then a thought. The witness didn't say the uncorrupted tongue would be separated from his body. What if he meant to find his body in the living world? The witness was one of the 3 sacred regrets, so if his body is anywhere, it would be at the city atop the shoulders of the giant statues. He returns there, to the elevated temples, to search its halls for wherever the witness's body may be. The higher up he goes, the more crimson the sky turns, and the more resistance he faces off against. But, sure enough, part of the way up, he finds a semi-familiar church. It gives the feeling that he's been here before in a dream. There are people here praying or weeping, and atop the church is an altar holding a crystal coffin with the body of a blonde-haired young man inside. The images of a sorrowful father and mother beside it, and of particular note, are 2 locked doors on each side of the room. One of the parishioners greets the silent warrior as a voice in a dream told him to expect his arrival. He gives the Penitent One a key, and knowing that he has finally reached the right place, the Silent One kneels in prayer and enters the dream of the witness again. The blonde man discloses that, for some unknowable reason, he was chosen by the miracle to witness and narrate the events which brought the miracle back to Cvstodia. It's said that by doing this, he gave his life, but how willing was he? The place in which his body now lies was created by the miracle itself, so his body could be displayed. A preserved, incorruptible figure, and that would mean that this man has seen every event, life, deed, sin, every thought, spanning the last several hundred years. Such knowledge could be a terrible burden to bear. The uncorrupted tongue the witness spoke of is within the sarcophagus. Opening it will require freeing the 5 black doves in their cages. Then he will give the Penitent One his uncorrupted tongue and all the secrets it holds. The key that the parishioner gave him unlocks one of the cages, and after freeing one of the doves, a long-lost sight is revealed, spectrally restored to a previous point in time. That is where he will need to go next, and once he's been shown, the witness sends the Penitent One away, back to the waking world. And though this is an interesting development, best not to commit to anything yet. Who knows what the witness's real motivations are here? He is definitely going to see what this spectral building is all about, though. He finds it located near the Crown of Towers, where not too long ago he fought Blasphemous and the Infanta. It's a bit of a leap of faith stepping onto the bridge, but it is as solid as any other ground. It takes him to the Basilica of Absent Faces. What looked transparent outside is fully realized within. As the name suggests, the paintings and specters here are missing their heads. But the Penitent One tracks them all down, on floating amalgamations of faces just crushed together like someone was making raspberry jam the illegal way. The climb is relatively simple, especially when compared to the previous climbs at the elevated temples and the Crown of Towers. At its end, an elevator lift starts to draw him up, at speeds and over a distance which make no sense, as though he were rising through an infinite tower. The soft voice of a woman calls to him, beckoning him to join her in endless prayer, one which transcends time itself. This is Benedicta of the Endless Orison. In life centuries ago, she was a sister of the Endless Orison, a congregation which honored the deceased with perpetual prayer. When a body was brought to them, a sister would volunteer to act as their warden, and she would pray over them every day. This was their entire life, their entire reason for being. One night, a new coffin arrived, that of a cardinal, and as the sisters gathered to prepare for prayer, Benedicta stepped forward, holding a parchment known as the Apocryphal Prayer. It was said to have a terrible power, and that whoever spoke the words would be trapped in eternal prayer, unable to stop until they starved to death. As Benedicta began to pray, the other sisters fled from the room, leaving Benedicta alone, knowing that she had sealed her own fate with this act. But no one knew why she had chosen to do it. When finally she is put to rest, the elevator lift ends its journey, and the Penitent One is rewarded with the key of Endless Orison. He kneels in prayer, and is once again returned to the dream where the witness resides. The blonde man tells the Silent One more of his tale. He was chosen to witness every event which led to the return of the miracle. He knew well that the miracle wanted to create a new icon, one all its own, which would be revered by all. All faiths, pleas, and hopes would unite in prayer to the miracle, therefore expanding its power. This second key frees the next of the black doves, and in response, a new area rises from the depths of the ocean. Well, if the Penitent One wasn't fully aware of the extent of how bad all this was, he's certainly getting the full picture now. If that icon is born, the miracle will extend far beyond Cvstodia. It may actually ascend as a god, doing what the High Wills couldn't do so long ago. In his explorations early on, the Penitent One had found the seaside. He knows where to go and quickly makes his way there after taking care of errands in the city. The cathedral which rose from the waves is truly beautiful. It's Gothic, melancholic, resting upon the sea of ink. The interior reeks of water damage and sea vegetation, but even after all these years, it's amazing inside. He seeks the one who guards this place, though, and the great warrior is not hard to find. This is Odon, of the Confraternity of Salt. He has nothing to say to the Silent Warrior. Odon came here long ago, when his ship was captured in a storm. Once it capsized, he and his men were pulled underwater, but they did not drown. They found themselves with a roof over their heads, with crusty salt all over their bodies, with seaweed and coral caught in their armor, with cracked lips and parched throats, but they seemed to yet live. Odon knew that this was a miracle, which they called the Salt, and they had been brought here to this missing cathedral within the sea to guard it. They would all do so until their deaths. Today is that day for Odon. He is freed from his guardianship to finally face the death he escaped long ago beneath the waves. Once the Penitent One has the key of salt, he kneels in prayer and returns to the dream to speak more with the witness. He tells of the miracle's floundering, the creation of a plague rather than a holy manifestation of itself. It spread like wildfire. No one was safe from that blessing. Another of the black doves is released and a new target revealed. It's someplace underground. A shrine or tower of some sort set upside down, the wax of its many candles dripping down to form a mound. This is not a familiar place. He is returned to the sunken cathedral and continues his journey from there. He finds his way underground into the labyrinth of tides, a place deserving of its name. He spies his goal from one of its higher levels. It's still a ways off in the distance, but at least he's in the proper region to reach the inverted tower. Even so far into this journey, though, there are people he might yet help, new faces in need of aid, like Regula in the depths of the labyrinth. When she was young, Regula stealthed her way into a painter's home, so she could be the first one to see their new great work. It was a painting of a saint, and Regula was so awestruck that she did something quite perverse. she placed a cloth upon the still fresh paint and stole away the face of the saint. She placed the cloth upon her own face and pretended to be the beautiful, pious saint. But after some time, in fear that she would be caught if she stayed too long, Regula removed the cloth and went to a window, only to discover that in her reflection there was no face. All that remained was a stump of dry, cracked flesh. Now, in continued punishment, she holds up the entry to the shrine of the saint, whose face she stole away. The Penitent One may help her by finding and opening a new entryway. In doing this, her burden to keep the shrine open is lifted, and she is finally able to let the walls she's held up for so long collapse. And if the Penitent One takes Regula's shroud back to the shrine of the saint, then she will finally speak with him. The saint says that by virtue of his actions, her followers will once again come here to worship, and Regula will be remembered for her sacrifice and her penance. Yes, the woman is already forgiven by the saint, and will rest by the saint's side eternally. Deeper into the labyrinth, more and more wax figures begin to appear on the paths, until he finds a bridge composed entirely of it leading up to the inverted, severed tower. This place was once a holy palace, walked by the upper echelons of the church. Now it's covered in wax, and its cardinals churned into bloated worm creatures. Men are fused into the walls, who are still aware enough to attack whatever comes close. The rider from the procession of shadows will take the Penitent One to farther corners of this damned place. It is the last journey that they will take together, though it's one that ends with the penitent being alone before a most precious item. It's one of many secrets hidden away here, another of them being him, Cesario. At first he may seem disturbing, but have empathy, for Cesario weeps through immense loss and fear. He is trying to save his child. Long ago, Cesario's wife died from the illness that swept the land, leaving him to care for their newborn all alone. But Cesario could find no food for the boy. The baby grew small and famished, and Cesario entrusted himself to the will of the miracle. In a desperate moment of faith, madness, and grief, he cut off one of his dead wife's breasts and sewed it onto himself. He asked of the miracle if this was what it was demanding of him. Is this what it would take for it to hear his pleas? But the miracle heard Cesario and answered his prayer. Liquid flowed from the breast and the baby fed, but it all turned to horror when the baby stopped moving. It had turned into a statue of wax. He now eternally weeps, trying to feed his son, hearing the voice of his wife echoing through the halls. If the Penitent One takes mercy and plants 6 wax seeds before him, then his child will be taken care of by the 6 wax sisters that sprout from them, and he will be allowed to fade away to wherever the miracle wishes to take him. The keeper of the 4th key is finally found, in a chamber which is decorated by the faces of the many pontiffs who came before him. This is Synodo, him of the 1,000 voices. Before his transformation, Synodo walked the halls of this holy palace alone, viewing the many paintings of the pontiffs dating back to ancient times. He stood before one of them and announced that one day every one of their visages would leave their paintings and appear on the fabric of a colossal cappa magna, which is a very long cloak or a vestment train. Synodo proclaimed that when this happened, they would all sing in perfect unison and their hymns would be eternal, for it was the miracle's will. Seems that Synodo was right. The entire chamber is lined with that grand cappa magna, though they do not sing during this confrontation. Whichever head is dominant howls as they fight, with the finale not ceasing his cries until the Penitent One truly destroys them. He is rewarded with the key of the council, and once again he goes into the dream to speak with the witness. He tells the Penitent One of a child who prayed for hope amidst desolation, a child whose prayer was heard, and through it a heart manifested in the sky, which would birth the new icon of the miracle. The child did it relying on pure faith. That was all it took. But the witness says, this is the miracle's last chance. The 4th dove is freed and the next location revealed. It is a city beside a lake, which only exists in the water's reflection, until now. The hollow, dark city rises into view. Could this be Yerma's hometown? The Penitent One has seen this lake before. He knows it well and has been to the outskirts. Thus, he knows precisely where to go. 2 moons, this place is called. Those that dwell here conceal their faces or lack one entirely. According to Yerma's tale, this was because of the vanity of one woman who lived in the palace of the city. She spent days at a time admiring her own reflection in the lake, as it seemed to enhance her beauty into something divine. She wished that she could keep her reflection for herself so no one could ever see it, and a twisted answer was sent. A bell chimed from deep within the lake, and all who looked in were changed, their faces distorted by the ripples. Yerma fled in terror and from afar watched the transformations happen. If this is her hometown, then she is sure to be here someplace. He searches every corner he can reach, uncovers every secret this place holds, and confirms his suspicion after several difficult fights. Yerma is here, and she's waiting for him. She warns him that they are near their final confrontation with the lady she so loathes. But she's not ready. Her spear needs a blessing if she is to destroy the lady. She asks if he might do it, with holy oil. The Penitent One has just the thing. He gifts her a holy oil of everlasting ointment. Yerma is ready to tear this woman apart now. She asks if the Penitent One will join her in this task, which he of course agrees to. The room that she hides in is locked off. They must first find the lady within the reflection of the city, under the lake itself. She's hidden away in a dark place in her human form, sitting as though she's looking into the reflection of water, admiring herself. The Penitent One's approach evokes the chime of the bell on the lake's bed, and the lady screams in terror as her own transformation begins. The glass which once kept intruders away from the lady's hiding spot melts away. The silent warrior fights his way back through the chaos of the two moons, and together the Penitent One and Yerma enter the chambers of Cvstodia, the beautiful woman. Contrary to her name, Cvstodia's beauty has not remained intact. Her transformation created this being, at times a lovely woman looking down into her own reflection, and at others a hollow skull set back in the head of a woman. She makes no motions for herself. The cherubs at her shoulder carry her throughout the arena, while magical attacks fly from the heart on her chest. The duo get their fair share of hits in, delivering to Yerma a long-fought and well-deserved victory. Her mission is finally over. The curse of her home has been lifted, but this is the end of their journey together. Yerma gifts him a powerful prayer and departs for the final time. As for the Penitent One, he has found the last key. He returns to the dream to speak with the witness. It is time for the truth, for the sarcophagus to be opened, and for the uncorrupted tongue of the witness to be his. It's finally time for the witness to move on as well, to a place between light and nowhere. They free the final dove, and the Penitent One departs. He must return to the Chapel of the Five Doves, to the real place where the witness's body is being held, and collect that tongue. Outta greets him back in the two moons, only to warn him that the heart in the sky is beating faster. The birth of the miracle's icon is approaching quickly. He needs to hurry along. He takes some time to complete his business around Cvstodia. The master sculptor is delivered all his tools, allowing him to finish his last great work. His daughter will take over his trade, as he has well earned his rest. The last of the wax sisters is planted for Cesario's baby boy. Finally, he can move on, find peace, knowing that his child is well taken care of. He uncovers the dark secret of that awful hand that insists on being kissed and revered by all. He returns the 5 daughters to the grieving woman and ends their mourning, so many stories and pains brought to an end, before he is confident that they will no longer need him. He returns to the Chapel of the 5 Doves to see his own story concluded. The people who worshipped here have fallen dead, and the sarcophagus is shattered. But, well, there's no sign of a tongue anywhere. One of the previous locked doors is now open, but the other is still locked tight, with a message about 4 envoys wrapping the father's body in soft linen cloths. That doesn't make any sense, at least not yet. The Penitent One goes to the other door to search for answers, finding himself in a new hellscape called the Crimson Rains. That strange traitor is here again. He always seems to be one step ahead of the Penitent One, but he's never been anything other than pleasant and even helpful. All that remains of his inventory is a single altar piece, which is a bit too expensive right now, so maybe later, bro. The Crimson Rains is composed of rubble, seemingly held together by barbed veins. The colossal heart of the miracle is clear to see at this height, and within it is the form of a man. As the witness had said, this is the last chance for the miracle, the new icon, and it is going to be born very soon. After a series of frustrating setbacks and failures, he purchases that last altarpiece from the traveling merchant. It's called Halake, and it's the image of a man wrapped in linen cloth. like the door had said. He ruffles through his bags and sees that he has 4 figures like this, people wrapped in linen cloth, things he'd just happened to get during his journeys. He takes his 4 figures back to the door, and sure enough, the damn thing opens, and inside there's nothing. A tub of embers are burning, but that's it. For a while, far longer than perhaps one might care to admit, he looks through his altar figurines to see if they mention anything about burning, but no luck. Those 4 figures, though, they're pointing in different directions, so he puts them all into his altar figure holder so that they're all pointing at and facing one another. And well, what do you know? He takes them up to the embers, and they're immediately burnt to a crisp. Super. But if he takes a moment and reads the stories that came with each altar piece, he puts together the entire story of that boy, the one who wished the heart into being so long ago. From the embers, he takes the combined charred remains of the figures. It too comes with a message. Whoever adorns their skin with this and performs the ultimate sacrifice will return to the heavens. So, maybe there's hope for Cvstodia and himself. Can he be forgiven? The answer to that doesn't matter right now. It's time. He's ready. The last climb is brutal. It takes everything in his arsenal to make progress and a willingness to fail and fall, which he does many times over. The end is signaled by a prie-dieu outside a great cathedral high above all else. It's his last chance to go back. Within these halls, bodies hang from the ceiling, stretching out far into the darkness of this place. But what truly draws the Penitent One's attention is Cvstodia. Her own weapon is plunged through her, and beyond her is a man sitting on a throne. He says that he has been waiting, endlessly waiting, which has been his penance. He was the first of the penitents, as old as the first miracle itself. He has been waiting for centuries for this precise moment, to stand as an enemy to those who would sin against the miracle. He has been waiting for the Penitent One's return. The ancient man says a grisly prayer to the miracle and finally rises from his seat. Cvstodia's legs do not yet carry him. The power bestowed upon him by the miracle does. And his powers are unlike anything the Penitent One has seen before. One has to wonder if the centuries confined here made him weaker or if he has just grown more dangerous with time. But at the end of their first round, Cvstodia reveals something. That huge nail in his hand was keeping him contained. He rips it out, draws Cvstodia's blade out of her chest, and plunges them into a new arena. He fights on his own legs now, with sword and magics both. His arsenal of power matches that of the Penitent One, who too fights with an intensity that is demanded of him. Survival isn't good enough. He has to end Cvstodia. When the Ancient One starts to slow and weaken, he plays out another surprise. He calls upon the strength of the 4 dead guardians. The visage of each launches into the arena to take a swing at the Penitent One. They are all bound together by the miracle, and Cvstodia's the strongest of them all. The first of the penitents is unbelievably stopped, the last line of defense for the new icon of the miracle. Cvstodia blessed her blade with her own blood for its future wielder. She didn't mean it for Cvstodia. She meant it for the Penitent One. He takes her crimson ribboned sword and plunges it through Cvstodia's heart, therefore cutting the very heart in the sky. The icon was born prematurely. This was a catastrophe averted, the hope of Cvstodia, but the being which came from the heart does still yet breathe and cannot be ignored. The crimson ribbons of Cvstodia's sword unravels, and a way up to the heart is made for the Penitent One, her last gift to him for this journey. He marks his skin with the charred remains of the altar figures, the incense of envoys, and then he ascends. Had the Penitent One failed to obtain the incense of envoys, he would have come here as a tool for the miracle. His body would have combined with the icon. He would have been the manifestation of the miracle. But because he is blessed with absolution, because the great grace from on high may grant him the ultimate forgiveness, he is protected. The icon, this incarnate devotion, speaks when the Penitent One appears. He speaks to the miracle, but he does so in confusion. He is the heir of its all-encompassing light. He is devotion itself made flesh. He is the miracle's greatest creation. Yet, why does the miracle deny him a place at its side? Why is he here? What is his purpose? Why was he born? and as any child would, he questions how he can prove himself. Does the miracle wish for him to destroy this Penitent One? If that will prove his worth, then so be it. The icon does not move on the field, yet he brings hellfire down. He is the embodiment of everything the miracle is capable of, and just like that which it was born from, it's fallible and imperfect. The heart he holds is his most vulnerable spot, but he never moves to conceal it. The Penitent One must avoid the ground, be aware of collapsing platforms, move through, above, and around powerful attacks, and dodge the additional adds that target him at different angles. The Penitent One accomplishes what he spent so long suffering for. He delivers a lethal blow to the last chance of the miracle. Confusion still consumes this otherwise innocent creature. He asks why his pleas have been responded to with pain, pain felt by the very flesh and heart that the miracle gave him. The icon has been met out punishment, which will be the sole legacy of the miracle. So perhaps that's why he was given life, to suffer the pain of what gave the miracle power. With his death, the affliction is over. The Penitent One has proven himself worthy of the ultimate forgiveness. The 4 envoys of on high themselves come down to greet him. The world of the living will recover, carry on, but he will ascend in body and soul to the on high, where those that he has aided and brought peace will meet him. They will watch over him in this cradle of blessings, where he too will be captured in the ancient canvas of light and time. Yet, there are faces missing, companions blessed which are not here at his side. Where did they go?